Hi everybody and welcome to the Helen Winder Show. This is the second masterclass with my guest Mark Baker, and today we're going to be talking about premeditated success for salespeople. Hi Mark.
Good morning, Helen. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. What about yourself?
I'm very good.
Good.
Delighted to talk to you.
Well, today I know we're going to be talking about selling. I have a few questions I want to ask you, but I just wanted to ask if you could tell us about the outstanding career that you have created in sales profession, as well as your love for the $1 Million Round Table and your revolutionary and high acclaimed sales coaching and training programs with the intriguing name Premeditated Success for Salespeople.
Yes, Helen, I'd be delighted to tell you a little bit of how I got started in sales. I actually joined the industry at 22 years of age. I actually never planned on joining the life insurance industry, which was where I actually got involved in sales. I was actually planning to go traveling with a group of friends around Europe in a camper van. We bought a lovely old VW mobile home to go together. On the Friday night before we were to go on the Saturday, everybody came around and pulled out, so I had given up my job and everything. I then saw this advert in the newspaper which said, become a financial advisor and earn £18,000 a year, which I thought was absolutely amazing money. It was 28 years ago and it was double what I was earning at the time. So I applied for the job, was quite impressed with myself, so I made it through one level to the next and eventually got the job, which was a short-lived feeling of euphoria, because when I joined I realized I was starting with 19 other people, which kind of took away the uniqueness and specialist thing I thought I'd achieved. But I actually failed miserably at selling for several years, but then the 19 people I started with, 6 months later, everybody else had dropped out the industry and I was the only one left. 22 years later, I was still in it. I got really into the selling. I really wanted to become successful at it, but I really wasn't getting any further on. In fact, I failed miserably at it. The first 6 or 7 months in the industry, the only thing I was selling was my possessions. I then found out about this organization called the $1 Million Round Table, and it really excited me. It was a worldwide organization with conventions every year in America. And on studying it, it said that only 0.5% of people under 30 actually qualify. So that was my first real goal in sales. I wanted to be one of the 0.5% to qualify under 30 years of age. So I worked my socks off. I was working 6 days a week. I was working till 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And I just made it, but I barely made it. But what the convention did, what the $1 Million Round Table did for me, it gave me something to aspire to, because there was different levels of success within the $1 Million Round Table. There was your entry level, which you needed to earn £40,000, which represented the top 5% in the industry, which might not sound like a great deal now, but bearing in mind the average income at the time for people in the life insurance industry was only £16,000 a year. So it was quite a lot higher than what the average. But when I got there, I actually found out that there was 2 other qualifications you could aspire to, which was quarter of the table, which was about 150,000 in pounds, and about 250,000 pounds was top of the table. So I decided at my first convention I really wanted to get to the top of the table. It was my goal. And it was so supportive and open. The world's best salespeople were present there, and everyone was approachable. If you went and grabbed somebody by the arm and says, look, can I grab a coffee with you, buy you a coffee and pick your brains for half an hour, no one ever refused you. Everyone was there. It was just quite remarkable. And there's 7,000 people there, so you had an awful lot of people to choose from. This is when my first exposure really came to speaking and speakers. I met General Colin Powell there. I met the Superman, Christopher Reeve. It was just an amazing experience. I mean, I love the $1 Million Round Table so much. I used to actually dream of being there. And if I mentioned to a friend I had this wonderful dream last night and said I went, and they said, what was it about? I said, well, I was at this insurance convention. Everyone would think I was insane. But in spite of all the massive support that I had, actually my production didn't really improve at all. And I started to realize that actually knowing more wasn't really a prerequisite for success. And really we don't have any power unless we have the self-belief to go with it. It's only when we have the self-belief within us that we're actually able to use this information to our benefit. Otherwise we'll sabotage ourselves and we just won't make it any further up as far as success is concerned. So anyway, I was at my first $1 Million Round Table and I saw a familiar face in the bar, so I went to speak to him. And this was June, this would be June, the meeting's always at that time of year. And I said to him, how much production have you done this year? because you always want to know what you've done, how did you do it, how many meetings do you have, and this kind of thing. And this chap said to me, well, I've done 90,000 so far this year. And that was incomprehensible to me. I didn't and couldn't fathom how anyone could do £90,000 in commission in 6 months. At that point, I'd done about 18,000. I was just about 50% of my target. But I just couldn't see it for myself. And I actually had a real aha moment. I was working with an investment company, and they'd asked me to go and speak to this client of theirs in London. So I flew across, and I met this chap, and we were just outside the restaurant. He grabbed my arm and swung me around. He says, look, Mark, he said, I don't know why you don't have the confidence. He says, you know what you're doing. He says, but this guy, I need to brief you about him quickly. He's one of the biggest shipping magnates from Russia. He's got an awful lot of money. In fact, he's got a little bit of a problem now. He's got £100 million he doesn't know what to do with. I said, well, it wouldn't mind having that problem. He said, but the thing is, he says, you've got exactly what this man needs. He says, but don't go mad. You know, if we can get him to invest £1 million, bring him on board as a client, you know, don't push too hard and just do your best. Well, we walked in, and I just wanted the ground to swallow me up, because this man, I'm actually scared to go in and meet this guy, but just to make it worse, he was your stereotypical kind of Russian man you'd imagine. He was 7'2", he looked like Dolph Lundgren, and he's sitting there with a panel of people on either side of him, several advisors on either side, and the whole restaurant's closed, and it's just there for this man to meet me. So I just felt, please swallow me up, I don't want to be here. I was so far out of my comfort zone, it was absolutely unbelievable to me. I went in, we sat down, and I started talking about what I did and how I could help him. And it was very, very awkward, and it was very mechanical, but I kind of got over that. And he says, well, what can you do for me? And I thought about what the chap that had introduced me had said, and about not asking for a higher investment than £1 million. But it suddenly occurred to me, well, you know, if this man considers himself to have a problem with 100 million, and I come in suggesting £1 million, he's going to wonder why he's wasting his time with me. So I actually said, look, what I really suggest is we do this just to test the water. Why don't you put £10 million in? He thanked me for the meeting, and he said he'd call me on the following Monday. So the weekend went by, and just to put it into perspective, this £10 million investment was a gross commission of £500,000. And although it had to be split 2 ways, my part was 250,000. And this is, you know, this is a long time ago now, and 250,000, even in Jersey, where properties are horrendously expensive, that would have bought me a brand new 3-bedroom house for cash. So, you know, my family were all excited. We were living in rented accommodation. We were going to make one sale and buy a house, which was absolutely fantastic, as you can imagine. And then the day after the meeting, my Financial Times came through the door, and this headline said, the end of this type of investment was nigh. And it was absolute nonsense, because it just wasn't the case. And I immediately thought, oh, I hope he doesn't read this. So I actually phoned up the Financial Times, and I managed to get through to this journalist, and I said, why have you said this? This isn't true. And he said, well, you know, I had read somewhere that, you know, in about 15 years' time, this type of investment is going to be a thing of the past. I said, but that's 15 years' time. These investments work on a 5-year cycle. So why have you done this? He says, well, you know, it just made compelling copy. Well, it might have made compelling copy, but it gave me 3 sleepless nights until I got to speak to this gentleman. On the Monday I spoke to him, and sure enough, he'd read the article. And he said, Mark, he said, look, he said, I like you. I believe that you believe in what you've recommended to me. He says, but this headline is very disturbing to me. He says, but I'd like to do £1 million with you right now. We won't do the 10, and we'll see how we go. So as exciting as that was, and incidentally, that was the biggest sale I'd ever done. It wasn't enough to move house with, so it was Thursday before Good Friday, and it was the worst Easter I'd ever had. But that wasn't really the point of all of this. The point was that it was actually the biggest gift I'd ever been given, because in successfully meeting with that man and doing business with him, I'd actually realized I had limiting beliefs in this area. I didn't believe I was up to dealing with people of his stature. I also didn't believe I was dealing with people who were board-level directors. But all of a sudden I realized that I was fine. And this literally just dissolved that limiting belief that I wasn't up to dealing with these people, because this man was so stereotypical of what I feared, and I'd been able to deal with him successfully, that all of a sudden I started seeing these opportunities everywhere with similar sort of people. And what actually happened that year, from barely trying to make £40,000 and just qualify for the top of the table, working every hour that I could possibly find to do so, and bearing in mind I had a young family that I really wanted to be with, I actually went from just about qualifying for the $1 million round table to the top of the table and generating nearly £300,000 in commission in that year. So it was a 700% increase. So I wasn't 700% better. I didn't know 700% more. It was just a simple shift in the mind that allowed me to just totally change the way, and life was never the same since. So although all of these people and mentors coming into your life and what have you and giving you advice, nothing really matters unless you've got the mental game and you're coming from the right place psychologically, because it's the mental prisons that we hold ourselves in that really hold back our success. And when we become aware of that, we can change everything. That is actually how I came to develop my success system for salespeople, Premeditated Success, because it's very unique in the world, because any sales course you tend to speak to somebody about or investigate, it normally speaks with techniques and ways of running, and it's all on the actual technical side of things. But I actually haven't come across any sales courses that actually deal with the psychological side of selling, and that really is where the bulk of your success comes from.
So what is the most crucial quality for success in selling?
Without doubt, Helen, the most important factor for success in sales is trust and integrity. It's your best sales aid. It's the most important thing. You see, people have a sixth sense. People know if you're there for them or whether you're there for yourself. And I remember one of the very first books I read when I got into selling insurance was by a man called Frank Bettcher. And I don't remember anything else I read in the book, but I remember this one thing. And he said, if you help enough other people get what they want, you can have anything in the world that you want. And that was really the philosophy that I built for myself in sales. My whole focus changed to looking after other people. In the beginning, when you're scratching around trying to make a sale so you can survive, it's all about you, and you're going in to see people, but it's all about getting a sale for yourself so that you can pay the rent and everything else. And that's the hardest kind of sales career you'll ever have, when you're selling just for yourself. When you turn that around and you're generally there for the other person, that is when you'll have a shift and your success will escalate. People really do have a sixth sense, and they know intuitively if you're there for them or for yourself.
You mentioned you had mentors. Are coaches, mentors an important factor?
I actually think one of the best decisions you can ever make is get yourself a coach or a mentor if you're in sales. In fact, in most areas of life, everybody has coaches. Tiger Woods, golfers have coaches, tennis people. Coaches are essential. They've been around in the business world for some time now, but still a relatively new thing. But they are important, and I was only exposed to this for the first time. You've heard me allude to the $1 million round table before and how open people were to helping. Well, I was blessed with having the best mentors in the world, the best coaches in the world, because I was so desperate for success in sales that I actually would Google and find out who the best were, and I'd met them at the $1 million round table. And I actually was personally coached by Ben Feldman, who was actually the highest earning life insurance salesman at the time. And I was also getting coached by a gentleman by the name of Joe Gandolfo. Now, Joe Gandolfo was a really fascinating man, as in the 70s, he sold more insurance on his own than 1,500 of the 1,800 insurance companies in America. Now, you didn't hear that wrong. He actually outsold 1,500 insurance companies by himself, so he was a remarkable man, and he was a mentor of mine. And from the UK, I had another mentor. His name was Tony Gordon, and he was a fabulous chap, and he was a very big producer. So I'd surrounded myself with the biggest producers in the world. And coupled with what they shared with me, plus the psychological side that I'd become to understand and been able to remove limiting beliefs, then it literally made me unstoppable. And I was able to make this into a system where I can help other people. But answer to your question, one of the major factors of the best benefits of having a coach is that you've got accountability. Now, if you're speaking to somebody and they're going to meet with you or speak to you on the telephone in 2 weeks or a month's time, and they've given you directives, and you've got to account to them that you've done them, then it puts you in a totally different mindset where you're actually moving. There's no making excuses anymore because you don't look stupid.
But you also said mentors didn't help until you got the mental barriers out of your life.
Well, that's exactly true. I mean, you've got to get the barriers out of the way first, the psychological ones, and then the mentors come into their own play. You know, as I said earlier, the best advice in the world doesn't help you if you cannot implement it. And I remember sitting in audiences listening to people, some of the top salespeople in the world, sharing their ideas and their philosophies and how they became these megastars, which is what I craved to be so much. And I can remember so clearly sitting in the audience and actually thinking to myself, it's okay for you, but that would never work for me. Now that's just a limiting belief. So it's so important to recognize, because we're so much more than we think we are. You'll hear inspirational speakers talk and say, you can do anything you want. Well, that's a lot of nonsense. You cannot do anything you want. But the truth is, you're actually operating so far within your potential. It doesn't matter if you can't do everything. You don't need to do everything. We're all leaning towards something that we're good at. We've all got gifts in certain areas, and the main thing is to uncover our gifts in those areas and to exploit them to our best success.
Do you put a lot of emphasis on closing sales?
Well, it's oddly enough, you're going to think this is really strange, but no, I don't. I don't think that closing is the most important factor in sales. In fact, what I teach people is that the sale is never made in the close. The sale is always made in the discovery and the information gathering process. It's in the finding out about the clients, finding out their values, what the most important thing is in their lives, and how you can help them bridge that gap to protect them, in my instance, because it's protection business that I was in. That's the most important thing. I mean, I don't think closing is that important. I mean, you can buy books on closing. In fact, you could fill your house with books on closing sales. And I only ever really used one close, which was the either or. I'd say to my client at the end, after I'd gone through discovery, would you like to do this or would you like to do that? It was always a yes or yes option, because if I'd done my job thoroughly, that client was left in no confusion as to that they needed what I had to offer, and it was just a question of which version that they were going to implement.
Mm. A lot of potential clients are nervous of salespeople and the fear of being sold to. How did you overcome this, or did you?
Well, as I said earlier, people have a sixth sense. But I was generally concerned for the welfare of my clients. It wasn't a contrived thing. It wasn't a sales tactic. But I just started to notice over time that really caring about people helped me make sales. It wasn't a conscious act. It wasn't a deliberate act. I'd sit with them and I'd say, look, don't see me as a salesman. See me as a friend or a professional buyer who knows a great deal about insurance, and I can help you through the maze and guide you towards the very best thing for you and your family. And then I get out my own policies and say, look, this is what I have. I mean, this is what I consider to be the very best, and I believe in this so much that I have it. I'm not asking you to do anything that I wouldn't do for myself or for my own family.
Do you think persuasion techniques are ethical? I mean, can persuasion ever be ethical?
Well, the simple answer to that is yes and no. I mean, I remember a chap that I heard in my very first meeting at the $1 Million Roundtable, a gentleman by the name of John Savage. And I remember this so well, and it ingrained itself so much in my mind. He said, if I persuade you to do something that will benefit you and is in the best interest of you and your family, then that's beautiful. But if I do it for personal gain, then that's disgusting. And I've lived with that philosophy ever since. And I found some of the best persuasion tactics purely by accident. I mean, I was an avid student of personal development, and everybody you meet's got a different problem. I mean, we tend to think that we're the only ones with problems and everybody else's life is absolutely perfect. But as you and I both know, that is not the case. But in chatting to people and finding out about the troubles that they had, I'd invariably know a fantastic book which would help them. So what I'd do, because it was always a two-step process, I'd meet them, I'd do the fact find, and then I'd go back to make the sale. So in between then, I'd think, well, I'd look up a book that I'd had that would work for that kind of problem. I'd go and buy them the book. Then I'd walk in the following meeting, I'd say, look, Ben, do you remember the conversation we had last week and you said you had this problem? Well, I hope you don't mind, but I've bought you this book. Now, the fascinating factor was that several months later, when I was trying to do some analysis on my sales and where my sales were coming from, 80% of the sales I was making was to the people that I'd given books to. And this is where I started to understand the law of reciprocity. And the law of reciprocity states that when we give something, we actually feel obligated to return something to that person that's given us something. In fact, we feel quite uncomfortable until we're able to actually return the favor of what they've done for us. And for me, bearing in mind a lot of these people are strangers, what can they give me? Now, all they can really give me was a yes. So that was perfect for me because I would give them something. So I made a natural habit of doing this, and I just found that that simple technique of giving something made people want to do business with you, and it was a great way of getting past objections and everything else, because it was just this subconscious need to give something back. And bearing in mind that I was always working to help them anyway, it just made my job of helping them an awful lot easier.
Mm. You talk about self-belief. What about belief in your product or service?
Belief in your product or service is absolutely essential. Again, people have a sixth sense, and your belief or lack of belief will be transferred to them. They will buy into you either way. They'll either buy into your convictions or they buy into your doubts. Everything counts. Nothing goes unnoticed, and everything is happening at a subconscious level. They don't know why. They've got a feeling that you're a good person to do business with, or they don't know why. Something about you they don't like, but it's all transferred at a subconscious level. If I had a really difficult prospect who wasn't going to buy, no matter what he said, and he had the family and I'm sitting there with his wife, I never said it, but I'd actually find myself looking at the wife in a pitiful kind of glance, thinking, oh, I can't believe that your husband isn't going to protect you. I mean, when I think back to those younger days, I can't believe that I wasn't actually thumped by somebody with what I said by not saying. But that was the conviction that I had. I mean, I felt so strongly that the need to protect your family that I actually genuinely pitied the families where the father wouldn't make that kind of commitment to look after them.
How many times should you call a prospective client before giving up?
Until they become a client. I mean, the vast majority of salespeople give up after the first call. But what you really need to realize is that a no now isn't a not ever. It's not, you've got to imagine that it's not necessarily the right time for them for that product or that service, but it doesn't mean it's not going to be the right time ever. Everyone will want your service at some stage. We've all had times where we've been calling on a prospect for 6 months, a year, maybe 2 years, and eventually we get an appointment, and they told us in the interim periods that they're not in the market for what we have to offer, and we go and sit down with them only to find out that they've taken out 1 or 2 policies or made a couple of purchases during that time. So it's got nothing to do with the fact that they didn't want your service, and it's got nothing to do with they didn't want you either, because we all tend to take rejection as personal, but you need to get past that. It's more about the timing than anything. And if you just keep on calling, you'll eventually get there. I had people I called on every 3 months for over 10 years without doing business with them. And most people would never go to that length, but I had a list of people that I really wanted to do business with, that I felt I could really help and I felt would really be worthwhile as clients. And some people I spoke for 9, 10, 11, 12 years before we ever did business with them. But when I got to do business with them, they became the best clients I ever had. And eventually they would say to me, look, I mean, if you look after me this well, I'm not even a client of yours. I'm really looking forward to seeing how well you look after me when I actually become a client. So this persistency is a quality. As long as you're not bugging people, it actually makes people think that you can be counted on. Because if you can be counted on when you've got no reason to call, then you're the kind of person they're going to want to deal with.
So what is your best method of getting new business?
My best method of getting new business was always referrals. Referrals help you dissolve all the standard resistance to salespeople. If someone trusts you enough to give your name to someone and they're trusted by that person, then the success of the meeting is almost guaranteed. But the key of getting referrals is to be worthy of being referred, and that all comes from how you treat the person you're going to ask to refer you in the first place. I mean, you've got to make sure you always do what you say you're going to do. You've got to be easy to deal with. Obviously, you've got to be trusted and come across that you're a trustworthy person. And over-deliver. Why is over-delivery important? It's because everyone expects the opposite. So all you need to do is deliver slightly more than what people expect you to do, and you become the exception to the rule, and you will stand out head and shoulders above everybody else, because everybody else wants to get away with doing as little as possible. Not everybody, but it tends to be the standard these days.
A lot of people say that the best salespeople don't like to give up their secrets. Is that your experience?
I think actually, Helen, that the opposite is true. I think the most successful people are the most open to helping. I think where that comes from in your question, I think what actually happens is that when salespeople become really successful, their behaviors become subconscious, so they aren't really aware of what they're doing at a conscious level. It's almost as if they're on autopilot. They're always adjusting. They're always altering to suit the different clients' needs and personalities. I've come to realize that the best salespeople are adapters. They are always adapting like chameleons. They're changing their dress, their mannerisms, their tone, their selling style to suit the individuals that they're selling and the ones that they're meeting. And they've become so comfortable in their own skin that they're actually not aware of what they're doing. It's actually a really beautiful thing to witness because they're true artists. I mean, they're literally adapting to the environment. We've all heard people say that old cliche that says, treat people how you'd like to be treated. But it's actually incorrect, I think. It's you treat people how they want to be treated. And when you understand how they want to be treated, you can adapt and best fit in with those people so that you become more acceptable to them.
I just have one final question for you. What is the most effective and powerful technique that you have ever come across?
The most powerful technique I ever had I came across by accident, which was how I came across most of the things that worked for me. And it was understanding the difference between needs and wants. In the beginning, I used to sell to the needs of people. And if you think about it, we don't really need a great deal. So if you're selling to needs, needs are small. I was dealing with this chap and I wasn't getting anywhere with him whatsoever. In exasperation, I said to the client, "What do you want for your family?" And that totally changed his answers to me, because when I said, "What do you need?" he wasn't coming up with much at all. And when I said, "What do you want for your family?" he said, "Well, you know," he said, "if something happens to me, I want them to be able to stay in this house." He said, "I want them to be able to have 3 holidays a year. I want the children to stay in private school. I want my wife to be able to have a new car when she wants one. I want my wife never to have to worry again." But when I said, "What do you need for your family?" it's a different answer. They'd say, "Well, they don't really need to stay in this big house. They could downsize to a smaller apartment. They don't need 3 holidays a year. They could make do with 1. The kids' normal education system's pretty good these days, so they don't really need to stay in a private." So when you say selling to needs, you're always talking down the sale. But when you talk to wants, then you're really increasing the size, but you're actually serving people better, because people actually need a lot more than they actually imagine that they do. And this applies to people in any kind of industry. I mean, if you think of a car salesman and he's selling a car and you're selling to needs, well, if you were going out to buy a car today, Helen, the only thing that you probably really need is air conditioning. Everything else is a want. You want leather seats, you don't need them. You want alloy wheels, but you don't need them. You want metallic paint, but you don't need it. So, and this is where the car industry makes all of its money. You know, you see a car advertised you really like, you're going to go for the one that's fully loaded as opposed to the one that's box standard with no air conditioning. So wants are really, really important. And that one word doubled or tripled the size of every single sale I made from that day onwards. That's really the essence of it. And it's such a simple, when you think about it, all we're talking about is one word. But that one word really makes such a difference to the size of your sales. I know that was your final question. And the only really other thing that I'd like to finish on with a parting bit of advice is that we're all quite dishonest to ourselves as human beings. We always make it easy for ourselves, and we get into bad habits and we don't do so well. But just ask yourself this one question. If someone was to follow you around for a week in your profession, would they say, "Wow, it's no wonder this person is so successful"? Or would they say, "Wow, it's no wonder this person is such a failure in sales"?
That's an interesting one. I like that one. Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for obviously bringing this masterclass to us today. Our listeners can also find out more about you at markbakerspeaks.com. You can also catch up with this masterclass again on my website, which is www.thehelenwindershow.com. Don't forget, there has also been a previous masterclass with Mark, which is also available on there, and we'll be back very soon with another one for you. I'll speak to you all very soon. Bye for now.